Water. It's vital to human life, our economy, and ecosystem. The very survival of our planet. But water challenges are growing more intense than ever before. Increasingly volatile weather patterns fueled by climate change, crumbling infrastructure, pollution, and overpopulation that's causing a surge in demand for water. But now, new technologies are offering bold new ways to protect and optimize water, to help the world become water secure, and Xylem is leading the way. Xylem is a Fortune 1000 global water technology provider, dedicated to solving water and smart infrastructure challenges. We have a century-long track record of trust and reliability, providing leading-edge technologies, expertise in equipment to utilities, industrials, and other users of water, working closely with our customers to develop solutions that manage water more effectively and efficiently all across the water cycle. Now, we're leading the digital transformation of water, partnering with our customers and innovation leaders, discovering new ways to harness the power of data and analytics, delivering unprecedented insight that's optimizing existing water systems, and creating a future that's more water efficient to meet the world's water needs, and more energy efficient to protect the environment. Our commitment to sustainability is fundamental to our business strategy, guiding everything from how we design new products to our culture and people. Through our corporate social responsibility program, Watermark, Xylem employees have volunteered more than 230,000 hours over the past 5 years, educating about key water issues, cleaning up local waterways, working with our NGO partners to deliver drinkable water systems to communities in urgent need, and deploying our experts, technology, and equipment to help disaster-afflicted communities. The world's water challenges are dramatically increasing, but so are the possibilities to solve them. Xylem is working every day to bring water technology and innovation to communities and people around the globe, raising awareness and reaching new audiences through partnerships and the power of sports, and helping create a world where water is more accessible, affordable, and safer for all. Water is always moving, and so are we. We're pushing forward, pursuing the opportunity of a lifetime. We're Xylem, and we're solving water. Join us.
Good morning, dear participants. It's a great pleasure to welcome you in the second session entitled New Water Culture of the second International Conference on Water, Megacities and Global Change. The session chair is Philippe Pipart, who is a program specialist in the science sector in UNESCO. Mr. Pipart, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. Welcome to this session, second session dedicated to a new water culture. And I particularly welcome our speakers this morning. In presence in Paris, Émilie Gascon from France, Dominique Gattel online from France, representing Mr. We have also Mr. Jinfeng Zhu from China online, and still trying to establish a connection with the last speaker, Mr. Periyasamy Velrazu from India. As you see, they come from different regions of the world, different countries. They have also very different and complementary backgrounds and experiences. And I think this will help us a lot understand better what we mean by a new water culture. Perhaps this is a kind of new concept for many of the auditors and our audience, but I'm sure that at the end of this session, this will be much clearer to all of us and the audience in particular. This is an emerging issue for all of us, and in particular in UNESCO. I've seen that in recent years, right now, while we are elaborating the strategic plans for the 9th phase of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, for example, this need to focus and work more to promote a new water culture appear in our plans. And that's something we see as very complementary to our overall mandate in UNESCO and in the IHP program, to educate, to acculturate people. So we have to change mindsets before we can make a change in the world. That's a little bit our motto and our mission internationally. So we are looking in particular to those new issues, and this is for a development, to promote a development that delivers on particularly on water sanitation for all, that protects ecosystem, water resources, cultural diversity and heritage, and promote peace and prosperity for all. And to do that, we need to overcome a lot of challenges, current, and of course in the future, the near future. And this requires, that's our conviction when we promote this idea of a new water culture. This requires to envision a world where water is considered differently and valued differently. A world with this new water culture. This has been mentioned in many sessions already, that technology, engineering, as usual, is not enough. We need to work with people. We need to, in fact, change mindset and consider water differently in many aspects of urban development. And that's what we will be talking about this morning with our distinguished speakers. UNESCO is investing in that, I told you, in the water program. We have launched in that framework a network of water museums. And in fact, the purpose is exactly not only to document what's the heritage, the water heritage we have received from the past, but also promote an idea that we need to live with water differently to guarantee a prosperous future for all. So that's very much in the program. I'm very pleased to chair this session this morning. So without spending more time, I'd like to give the floor to our first speaker. She's there in front of you. It's the great chance to be in our headquarters in Paris. Welcome, Emily. You will have a presentation on Beyond Resiliency to Floods, Designing and Planning for the 21st Century Water Cultures. You are an architect practicing urban projects with urban planning and design, architecture, landscape agencies. You hold a PhD in architecture and planning, and you're teaching at the ANSA of Versailles, where you, as an associate member of the laboratory, LEA. Your work focuses mainly on prospective questions of the transformation of urban environments and territories with social hydro-ecological systems. Your work focuses also on question of how to elaborate the city of the future with co-design methods in particular. So, dear Émilie Gascon, the floor is yours.
Bonjour et merci.
Good morning, and thank you for this introduction and for your invitation to speak to you here today. Today, I'm going to try and talk to you about resilience against floods, and especially about going beyond resilience. The idea is to reflect and to implement ideas on water culture in the 21st century. It is no longer necessary to select particular disasters to illustrate the frequency, intensity, or the severity of flood-related impacts around the world. One thing is sure, and that's that rainwater, by the way of and fluvial flooding and urban runoff. All these elements are already major challenges. Rotterdam is already sitting below sea level and Bangkok is sinking. These challenges and the issues are very complex and very complex, but facing this complexity, some of the hypotheses are actually quite simple. If urbanization models by its form and function is part of the problem, then urban design and planning can be part of the solution. And if resistance always has its limits and only displaces risk, then we must embrace resilience. So despite the difficulty and complexity of these tasks, it is interesting to note that there's a field of opportunity for new cultures in the 21st century, new water cultures. We have past examples and new research that attest to a window of opportunity. But be careful, I'm saying it is a window of opportunity, because even if a change of paradigm is encouraging, there will be limits to, depending on how long we wait to act. So in this presentation, I'll quickly present certain practical cases and the lessons we've learned from these cases, and also present a theoretical contribution on opportunity-based contributions for resilient cities, eco-resilient cities to flooding. And then I'll conclude on the idea of water culture, and also I'll talk about and I'll warn against some of the limits to these concepts. When you analyze certain practical cases, you can observe that when you're considering the waterfronts from an architectural point of view in private housing, there is a exemplary practice, which is when you're living above water territory, and to accept this position. And so you can see this in Thai traditional silt houses, the Ran Thai, as well as their Thai traditional floating houses, Ran Pei, where show not only the common sense, but also a diversity of typology, of manners of living with water. In dry times, where you live on the lower floors. If it's wet, you live on the upper floors, and so it depends very much on the meteorological conditions. This is an example of living installations, but it's not the only example. There's also examples of mixed public and private practices that organize urban life with various activities along rivers and canals. The city of Xitang is in China, is built along the waterfront, and it shows a way of living with water thanks to a whole system of galleries. And there's a lot of variations and a diversity of relationships between public and private spaces and the water. There's a lot of different installations that incorporate water, like, for example, all the different rooftops are inclined in such a way to direct water flow into water collection reservoirs, for example. So urban architecture in Asia and the analysis of these architectural cross-sections gives you an idea of the interactions between water and architecture and society. Other contemporary examples can also show that the principle of work on sections is key to accept water as part of the environment. There's the example of Boston, which developed a whole system of horizontal hybrid systems between landscaping and urban planning. And one of the most automatic and common reaction to water is to create dikes and walls to protect oneself against water. In Sasaki's Boston Sea Change, the traditional divide between water and land disappears thanks to a whole buffer area that brings together different characteristics. And so it's really a form of eco-engineering that adapts itself to the landscape. The landscape and different fields of environmentalism take an important role in this work and in the use of the waterside areas. And these landscaping and environmental solutions help to mitigate and control risks, but also provide amenities to the inhabitants. Now, we don't have the time to show you the whole diversity of the various projects there, but you need to remember that the contact and the substance is important. The land is not static, and you need to see it as a multi-layered, thick space with its own capacities. This paradigm change in the waterfront is also observable within city districts when it comes to rainwater. Blue and green strategies are indeed taking the lead to manage urban runoff. So without going into a whole list of cities, it goes with Copenhagen, New York, Philadelphia, Singapore, or the Chinese program of sponge cities, there are a few strategies that's worth looking at. What I'd like to underline is the potential for transformation thanks to these blue and green strategies. So if you take two cases, first of all, Copenhagen, there's really been a transformation of the urban landscape there. There's the Ramble project there, of the Ramberg Dreisel Studios. And there's many different mechanisms made up of canals and parks and streams that have been deployed. But what's most important is there's a synergy between green, blue, and mineral elements to direct water towards areas where it is desirable, all the way to the sea. And this is an interesting project. In Copenhagen, there's a transformation of the perception of the city that needs to be highlighted. The Marco Vermeulen program, Waterstadt 2035, for example, helps us reread the city in a different way that is based on the geographical concept of watersheds, but operationally it operationally and urbanly transforms it with a whole series of watersheds that are transformed into water squares. So there is a certain artificiality in this territory, but which takes on board more of a geographical angle. But this is an interesting case because it really is a hybrid system. And even though they use similar systems, they give you different perceptions of the different components of the city. As a conclusion to this first section on the different practical cases, it can be said that dealing with the vision of the area of the territory in this hybrid way that mixes design, engineering, ecology, and economy, by working all of this together, this allows you to diminish risk and also to reconnect with the land, with the territory, in a dynamic way. This provides lots of resources and possibilities. And by studying these practical cases, I saw that there were actually quite few theories that were based on this. So faced with the concept of living with, this concept seems to correspond to a positive vision of flood risk, but only few scientific research introduced the concept of opportunity into flood risk management. This is what I worked on in my doctorate. The idea is to validate the concept of opportunity when it's applied to floods, but also we need to develop a design based on opportunity in order to reinforce flood resilience in cities. I will not explain the methodology to you, but you can read it yourself if you want to. But what I'd like to do is present to you the result of this study, which is a list of a grid of conclusions of these different strategies when it comes to this concept of opportunity and risk management. So this is a conceptual list that's based on the physical elements of the territory that can lead to potential benefits. A summary of this conclusion will help you understand the logic that underpins this method. The main point is to establish synergies between flows and processes that are linked to the physical elements of the territory. linked to water flows, water circulation. The starting point is to deal with water under all its forms as a resource and to use the variation of these flows to organize and reorganize different functions, different capacities of and characteristics of an urban environment. So the idea is to think of water at every level, buildings, districts, cities, and the interactions at all these different scales, in all different environmental conditions, as a means to transform the relationship between the urban environment and water. This practice can help restore the territorial capacity and also restore new functions. And it's always this circulation of water in the territory that facilitates the production of other resources, such as nutrients, food, and so on and so forth. This method can be summed up in 4 points that you can see on the slide. But the idea is really to understand that starting from the principle that floods, and especially floods that can provide an initial resource, by basing yourself on this resource, you can implement systems that absorb the water loads and create conditions for other social and environmental advantages. As a main lesson of this work, one can highlight that opportunity-based design aims to manage and exploit the interactions and synergies between the physical elements of the urban territory. And this is an approach that creates virtuous cycles and cascades down opportunities. It links different functions and uses in space and in time. So there are different advantages that go from air purification to educational activities, but the potential is mainly the understanding of the physical territory and combining constraints and opportunities, which can lead to interesting ideas to create new multifunctional systems with interdisciplinary and multi-temporal uses. And what you need to understand is you can reconnect cities with the landscape from a local innovation point of view, but also with a greater objective of regenerating the landscape and creating new water cultures. Finally, well, first conclusion from a theoretical point of view, the opportunity-based design method offers potential in response to the complexity of urban flood territories. Through diversity and proactiveness, it demonstrates that creating synergies and benefits in a cascade model is possible and is relevant. Practical cases are already showing that water urbanism can be implemented. It shows that there are opportunities to be seized, but you really need to be careful and pay attention to the window of opportunity and to our capacity to reformulate and to reinvent the urban landscape. And my second conclusion is that faced with these floods, there are three main hypotheses. First of all, we fortify ourselves, we reject water, but we already know what the technical limits exist to this approach to combating floods. The second hypothesis is to accept water on the territory, to allow it and to adapt to it, and that is the argument in whose favor I am talking today, and the topic of this presentation. But you do need to be careful to the territorial and time limits of this approach, because it's already too late or too costly to retrofit certain urban landscapes and territorial systems. And so in those cases, there's a third option, which is to retreat, to move somewhere else. So where can you go and how can you go there is obviously a question you need to ask, but also if you retreat, you also have to be careful not to repeat the same mistakes that were made before. So you really need to take into account the complexity of the relationship between water and the landscape in order not to make the same mistakes again. So let's start experimenting new water cultures as of today. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Emily, for this excellent presentation and for respecting the time you had.
we have to live on water and accept its movement. I think it's a very, really summarizing exactly what you've explained to us. And so it's very interesting and exciting to see then how similar principle can be translated into urban planning, transformation of cities to make them more resilient to water-related risk. In the 60s, we have learned from Mr. Makar how to design with nature. So you teach us this morning how to design with water, which I think is an excellent principle. And so thank you very much for this. I'm sure we will have questions, and we will take them later on for all presenters at the end of the session. Thank you again very much. By the way, I wanted to mention that we are to release a book in a UNESCO book edited with Professor Matthias Watsen, and the name, I'm sure you will love it, is about river culture, and the subtitle is Life as a Dance at the Rhythm of Water. La vie comme une danse au rythme de l'eau. Vous parlez de, you've spoken about accepting the movement and accepting the rhythm and the seasons and the changes. So that's definitely a very important and central concept into this overall concept of a new water culture for sure. Thank you so much. We will now pass to the second presentation, still from France. This presentation should have been given by Mr. Dominique Gattel, who is a general manager of T-Park in Hong Kong, which is the experience which will be presented to us by Mr. Dominique Gattel on his behalf. Dominique Gattel is the Director of Water Public Affairs at Veolia headquarters. So Dominique, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for having selected this paper. It's about the T-Park, the sludge incineration facility in Hong Kong. Next slide, please. I'm delivering this paper, as Philippe has said, I'm delivering this paper on behalf of Vincent Deleu, who cannot be with us this morning. Since 2010, Vincent is the director of the Veolia subsidiary in charge of the Hong Kong sludge incineration facility, and Vincent has more than 20 years of experience in the waste to energy nexus. A brief outline of our presentation. I'll first try and give you a grasp on the context and the reason which led the local authorities to come up with this project. First, I'll describe basically the tender specification and the selected solution before we discuss a little bit what T-Park actually does. I would say together with the people, I mean, to echo what Philippe was saying as an introduction. Next slide, please. Yes, people are center stage anytime, anywhere in what we do with water matters, and that is certainly true in Hong Kong. The first thing to realize is that Hong Kong is a relatively teeny territory and has seen a doubling in its population over the last 50 years. And even though the population has reached now more or less a plateau, that increase in population, I mean, generates as much wastewater, which has to be dealt with somehow. One of the issues at stake in that particular regard is that this sewage management has an impact definitely on the Hong Kong harbor quality. You see a swimmer on the right-hand side of the slide, and this is something which is at the core of the project, which I'll describe in a minute. Next slide, please. So you have here a map or a picture of the Hong Kong territory. Briefly described, you have the new territories, the continental part of Hong Kong on the top of the slide, the Hong Kong Island in the bottom of the slide, and the Victoria Harbour right in the middle. The yellow dots are the sewage treatment works. And basically to restore the Victoria Harbour water quality, the Hong Kong authorities developed a sewerage improvement program which started in 2001. It's called the Harbour Area Treatment Scheme. The acronym is HATS, which basically consists in deep tunnels. There is one deep tunnel on the northern shore of the Victoria Harbour, which collects the sewage from the different facility and converge them into the spot number 8 on your map, the Stonecutter Island. And equally, you have a deep tunnel in the south, which collects the sewage from Hong Kong Islands mostly, and again converge it to the Stonecutter Island, where the sewage treatment was improved. And that boosted the generation of sludge from something like 700 tons per day in 2000 up to 1,200 tons per day nowadays. And so the Hong Kong authorities, they did a sludge treatment and disposal strategy study to compare the various sludge disposal routes, including composting, oil from sludge, drying, incineration, marine disposal. And they concluded that incineration is the most suitable for Hong Kong, basically because it saves 90% of the landfill space, which is a big constraint in Hong Kong. There are some additional benefits, which is the generation of surplus energy, the use of proven technologies, and it's also less susceptible than drying to the corrosion problems, knowing the high chloride content in the sludge of Hong Kong. There are some issues spotted. Such a facility has to be operated by trained personnel, which is a challenge knowing that in Hong Kong there is little hard industry. There are also concerns with the emissions in the air, such as dioxin, knowing that Hong Kong has strict criteria. The other criteria in terms of selecting a suitable site were, of course, the environmental implications. We'll discuss that further. The transportation from the Stonecutter Island into the selected site, also the town planning, etc. And these different considerations led to the selection of the Ash Lagoon at Sang Tsui in the northwest of the territory. If you can click 2 times, please. 1, and then yes, at the tip of the arrow, you have the this Ash Lagoon at Sang Tsui. Next slide, please. The early project design went through an environmental impact assessment study, which covered, of course, the impact on the air quality, the human health risk, the ecology, the waste management, the landfill gas hazard, of course, the water pollution, noise, landscape, and visual aspects. And there have been also an extensive stakeholder and public consultation, and the findings of both the impact assessment and the public consultation were taken forward in a project feature, which resulted in a wish list, which is basically what you have on screen there. In terms of the technical side, the challenges were the variable sludge dryness and calorific value, the evolution of the sludge load through the lifetime of the facility, and as already mentioned, the high chloride content in the sludge. And the last but not least feature was the emphasis on the ecological design of the facility. That's the the bottom bullet point on your slide. Right from inception, the Hong Kong authority wanted that this facility should be designed within the landscape that would welcome the facility. Next slide, please. This is meant to give you a grasp on who are the actors of the solutions. Of course, on the top of that slide, you have the Environmental Protection Department of Hong Kong, which is the in lead of the whole project. And below, you have Veolia, which takes pride of having won the project, joining expertise in water, waste, and energy technologies and management. The contract, in concrete terms, is a 15 years design, build, own, operate contract in operation since 2015. During the construction time, there were 2,000 staff present on site, so substantial amount. Now it's reduced down to 140 staff plus 40 subcontractors. Next slide, please. A very quick snapshot on the facility layout, showing the organization of the site. In the bottom of your slide, you have the zone 2, which is basically the technical zone with the incineration plants. There's 2 from the entry and the stacks, the emission of in the air. And in the top of the slide, you have the zone 1 with the landscape gardens and all the visitors facility, which I'll describe more in the next slide. Before we leave the technical matters, I just wanted to give you, this is actually an excerpt from the website, which I encourage you to visit, showing the process. On the left side, you have the sludge reception. The sludge is carried to the site by boat, and then there are trucks which carry the sludge from the boats into the facility on the remaining 300 meters. There's 2 units of the odorization system per plant. And at the other end of the process, you have the flue gas treatment system with emission control in stack, with in-stack monitoring to ensure strict compliance with the EPD standards and also basically the European standards in terms of emission in the air. Right at the heart, at the core of the process, you have 1 steam turbine per plant, generating 2 times 40 megawatt of electricity. There are also heat exchangers to heat and cold for the air conditioning of the facility, etc. Rapid talk about the water management on the site. To make it short, T-Park is fully autonomous with a zero wastewater discharge policy. There is an RO desalination unit to provide for processed water, demineralized water for the boilers, etc. There's also rainwater harvesting for non-potable use. And the wastewater of the site is treated for reuse in irrigation, flushing, cleaning. Next slide, please. So what makes T-Park unique are the dimension and the technical design, the efforts to save energy and waste. But as I told you before, big efforts were done to integrate the facility in the life of the Hong Kong citizen. First, it starts with the design. The building echoes the waveform of the hilly landscape in Hong Kong with the landscape garden in front of it. So again, a big attention paid for that to be a facility which is not simply an industrial facility. It is an industrial facility, but that's also meant to be something at the core of the life of the Hong Kong citizen. Next slide, please. And as a matter of fact, I mean, anyone familiar with incinerator, usually, I mean, it's again a very industrial facility. You have to if you want to visit it, you have to wear the personal safety equipment, etc. In T-Park, of course, if you go at the core of the process, you need these personal safety equipment. But conversely, any visitors, any citizen of Hong Kong who wants to have some leisure at T-Park, they just go on the website on the top left corner of the slide. They book their visit and they can go on the site and enjoy the facility. There is the tea cafe, which is held by a local charity. There are 3 spas, which of course are heated by the warmth recovered from the process. And of course, there are the landscape gardens, which we've briefly seen in front of the building. Next slide. So I just want to end this tour of the Tea Park by showing the local motto, which summarizes the spirit of the facility from me to we. Right from inception, again, I mean, the Hong Kong authority have wished that facility definitely to be a big industrial facility which solves the issue of disposing of the sludge in the best possible manner in terms of the environmental protection. But equally, they wanted that facility to become part of the daily life of the citizen, for them, of course, to enjoy the leisure possibilities of the site, but also take this opportunity to realize, I mean, what means water management, what means waste management in Hong Kong, how it is dealt with, what is the policy that the authority have about it. With that, I'm happy to take any question.
Thank you so much, Dominique, for this excellent presentation. And again, respecting the time you had to present it. Reading the title of the presentation before listening to you, could have wondered why we were including that in a session dedicated to a new water culture. What does that mean? That we put wastewater treatment plants into thinking about a new water culture? That could have appeared a little bit strange to someone, but then I think your presentation has been very clear and very impacting on this. It has a lot to see with that, and I think I love again the motto you showed at the end, from me to we. So again, to use even such an industrial plan as an opportunity to reconnect to people, to develop educational activities, to let them think about the fact that wastewater can become a resource for energy production. At the same time, you have also showed very clearly how caring about wastewater means that we care a lot about a lot of things, not just sludge. And you think about energy, in fact, recovery, but you mentioned also the big care for air quality, for the quality of the ocean. And so that's, yeah, we can say that such an experience can be very much at the heart of promoting a new water culture in a big city like Hong Kong. Thank you very much for showing us that. And we will take questions at the end of the session. I've seen that on the chat, there is already a question for Emily, but also for you. And I have also my own question if we will have time. Thank you so much again. So we will now listen to Dr. Jinfeng Zhu from China. The title of the presentation is Establishing a Multi-Participation Urban Water Source Protection Site Mechanism, a case study of the partnership of metropolitan water source protection. Dr. Zhu Jinfeng is Secretary General of China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. He was a member of the 9th, 10th, and 11th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. And he served as the 9th and 10th Vice Chairman of the China Vocational Education Association. He's the Vice Chairman of the World Green Design Organization, member of IUCN, Executive Committee, Marine Connectivity Working Group of IUCN, and Executive Committee member of the Club of Rome. So, Dr. Zhu, the floor is yours.
Mr. Zhu, we cannot hear you.
Sorry. Thank Philip.
Please.
And we would like to share our understanding of the new water culture through few cases we experienced. And as we mentioned in the title. Next, please. What is PMWP and how does PMWP work? Methods in Upper Yellow River cities under the PMWP framework. In some other cases, related results in the conclusion. Next. What is PMP, which is a partnership of Megacity water source protection and a water resource protection mechanism that works together, involves multiple parties, which we start. In fact, it is started very early to start with the Miyun reservoir protection of local community. But during 2015, we joined we participated in the workshop and offered some funds to officially establish the partnership, which including CCGDF, which is our Foundation for Biodiversity, and the Beijing Forest Society, and IUC in China, Forest Trends USA, and the China Society for Soil and Water Conservation. And we focus on the protection of drinking water source, starting with Beijing and extended along the Yellow River of northern part of China. Next. How does PMWP works? We do, of course, we get some funds from downstream enterprises and individuals. And also we invest the fund, and not invest, we provide the fund to the upstream water source protection projects, including some rangers, some policy advocating, and all those kind of related projects. And for the downstream users, we set up a mechanism for them to purchase watershed ecological service from upstream farmers in the communities. Next. And we include information collection, on-site survey, and panel seminars, workshops, ranger, and including we organize the people do some waste collecting. We stop in bad activities, including illegal activities in the reservoir area. And we also very much put our emphasis on policy advocating. That helps to set up a comprehensive all stakeholders participation protection mechanism. Next. We have, besides Beijing, we work on upper Yellow River cities with this framework, including Lanzhou City, Tianshui City, Baoji City as examples, which all along the Yellow River. And all those big mega cities have have shortage of fresh water and face the challenge of water supply. And with our framework, we organize all stakeholders and promote the new culture of water and promote the new policy activities and try to set up some local mechanism to protect fresh water for those mega cities. Next, please. Besides the PMWP, I would also, this is another example. Shenzhen is a well-known mega city of China. They have a very big project through channel dredging. They are setting up a new cruiser line for eco tourism. It's a big project, dozens of billions of R&D projects. The local government wanted badly, but we think this is not right for the new culture, new water culture. We should protect the wetland, and we stopped the channel dredging project. And finally, we wrote to Ministry of Environment and have the environmental impact assessment organization. In this case, is Institute of Chinese Academic Science. The EIA organization was fined 2 million because of this, and this project was stopped. And eventually, people, government, scientists, civil society, all parties participate are welcome our stopping of this. And we encourage starting a new culture, a new understanding. We need to preserve the nature instead of promoting the new project of ecotourism. Next, please. This is another project, and in China, and we have a very big promotion of planting trees. This is in Beijing, Floating wetland, but because of the pressure of planting trees, they started planting trees in the wetland, which is not feed the new culture of water. We need to protect the waterland instead of planting trees. Next, please. Results. With separated institutional mechanism cooperation and with the setup and with all parties participation, we are encouraging to set up a new group of culture, water megacity related to face the changing world, and through all those protecting activities, we are starting a new water culture. Next, please. To improve the existing supervision and administration mechanism, this is the major #1 task, and we think this is what we really need. So next we would like to mention when the new culture of water is the core part, but we extend it to a new civilization. A new civilization will include the administration, the legal system. Of course, culture is the whole part, but we really, our experience encourage to improve the legal system, the administration, and all these things must change. And also to give full play of civil society, social organization, improval of public awareness will be very important. For the Shenzhen case, the government loved the tourism project. The scientific, the EIA, environmental assessment, impact assessment, they love the project. But we realize the public awareness or participation is a key to stop those bad conflicts with our new culture of water. And also the next conclusion is to embed ecological civilization in the design and implement of water source protection and ecological projects. There are many projects, and even including the water source protection project are not good enough. Next, please. And we have several, we have 3 guidelines and 4 principles. I would like to explain a little bit. The 3 guidelines is about the environmental protection, the pollution protecting, stopping pollution. During stopping pollution, we emphasize the 3 guidelines. We cannot extend the projects too much. We should stop we should not clean all rivers in China to the drinking level. For example, we need that will cause a big eco resources. And the 4th principle is about the ecological project. First one is the natural principle, and second is civil principle, and then is the limited principle. The fourth is systematic principle, and the ecological civilization, and the industrialization, industrial civilization always try to extend the projects, the program they want the big project, but from the new culture, from the new civilization, we should not extend that much. We should focus on nature, on saving. That will help us to save our water resources. And finally, public participation and supervision. And in China, and the government is very strong, which is good in certain cases, but some governments really want the GDP, which is terrible for water protection, which is terrible for the changing world. For megacity water issues, we need more public participation and supervision. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhou, and for the very interesting cases you have brought from your great country, China. I have had the pleasure to work for a while, and I was definitely impressed by the strong sense of water civilization you can experience in China from the past, the need to control floods, to benefit from water and develop along the main rivers, and China's use also as a connecting means among people and culture. I was really impressed by that. But what I would highlight from your presentation is that, like our first speaker, Émilie Gascon, you stress the need to reconnect people to water, and I like very much this idea that even people living in mega cities, you have mentioned a few of them, Shenzhen, Shanghai, Wuhan, have to understand that water cannot be taken as granted, can create problems, but also fresh water we need to develop, and for our prosperity needs that someone is caring about it. And it's very interesting that you are exploring that possibility to compensate and for the ecosystem services of those who plant trees, protect the water source outside the city, in wetlands, in the mountains, in rural areas. And so there's a very interesting principle of solidarity and compensation, paying for the services you receive, and you take as granted because you just open a tap and have fresh water. But it's interesting that a good living in megacities needs water, and by caring about the source and who is working for having quality water, you can also support communities in mountains, in rural areas. So it's a very nice principle of a new water culture. And I'm happy to understand from you that this is embedded somehow in the eco-civilization principle China is developing. Thank you so much for this very, very inspiring presentation. I hope, again, we will have questions after the last presentation. Dr. Velrazou from India is now connected with us, so we will have the fourth presentation, which is dedicated to water supply system of Mumbai in India, emerging into new water culture from the past. Dr. Velrazou is an Indian administrative service officer and holds a master's degree in public policy from University of California, Berkeley. He's currently serving as the additional municipal commissioner for project of the Municipal Corporation of the Greater Mumbai in India. He and his team plan and execute large projects of the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai on water supply, sewage disposal, stormwater drainage system, financial management, and coordination. He also worked in the field of governance, rural infrastructure, urban infrastructure, and finance over the last 20 years. So welcome, Dr. Velrazou, and the floor is yours for our last presentation this morning.
Thank you, Chair. So the topic, the new water culture, that's a very timely and relevant topic for all the metropolis cities. We in Mumbai, it's one of the largest metropolis in the world. Next slide, please. So this Mumbai is an island city with a population of about 14 million. It's one of the highest populations in the world. But the density of the population is also very high. It's close to 20,000 people per square kilometer. It's one of the highly densely packed populations, which makes the water supply in such a setting very complex. The demand, it has been going up very rapidly over the last several years. In fact, one of the key challenges for the Mumbai Municipal Corporation would be to provide water supply in an uninterrupted way to all the population. This is one of the key challenges. Next slide, please. So when we think of the new water culture, I think our corporation, the municipal corporation, it has been in existence for more than last 200 years. And the water supply department, it is one of the oldest. So there has been a culture which is ingrained in the department. For example, we own and operate about 7 large dams or reservoirs. We build them. So, but what the department sees is, initially when we built the first 2-3 large dams for drinking water supply for Mumbai, they were relatively very peaceful affairs. None of them objected to it. So we could build those dams, and those dams are serving us well. Even today, we get adequate water from them. But if you see the first slide, there is a huge gap between the demand and the supply. Currently, the water resources, they will slightly fall short. So we have plans to construct the new dams, but now the current theme is not to cut trees, and the carbon footprint will be very low. So these are the current themes. So the department is also trying to ingrain the new culture. For example, we have another dam project in the pipeline where we can add another 400 million liters per day of capacity. But to execute the project, the cost of environment, we have to cut down about 0.25 million trees, which is totally objected to by the local population. So there are some serious trade-off. We have to create the new water resources. At the same time, we have to take care of the global climate change issues, the carbon footprint issues, environmental issues. These are the new challenges which is creating a new water culture in our department also. Our understanding is to have the great culture, like any organization, to have a great water culture, there has to be an engineering efficiency that includes the lowest possible non-revenue water in the transmission and distribution systems, which we are trying to achieve. And there has to be a pricing efficiency. Most of the cities in the Western setting, they would be having a proper pricing. But cities like Mumbai, our pricing, our sale price of water, it is not even covering 25% of our production costs. So we have pricing distortions also, which in turn affects the adoption of new technologies. When the pricing is not proper, it delays the adoption of new technologies, which in turn save water. So it is a cyclical issue, which we are trying to address on various fronts. So for example, this slide shows what we have traveled over a long period of time, from starting from no meters to mechanical meters, now to electromagnetic meters. We are trying to measure water at each stage. This is an evolution going on over the last 30-40 years. Next slide, please. But like I said, the technology adoption can be speedier if the water is priced properly. So that is a real policy issue for administrators like us, where the huge public demand is not to pay the full charge, but they expect great subsidy. So when your water culture, for new water culture, like I said, the energy cost has to come down and the carbon footprint has to come down. So the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, we have already implemented 2 huge solar projects. And apart from this 5 megawatt project, which is implemented, we are in the process of implementing another 100 megawatt floating solar project that will be done in one of our dams on the water surface. So that also we are planning. This is only to save the energy as well as to make it green. That is steps we have been taking. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, like I said, the climate change has been a great issue for us of late. The last 10-15 years, the Mumbai is located in one of the highest rainfall zones. We get more than 300 millimeters of rain every year. Even though we get huge amount of rainfall, the climate change affects us very badly because most of the rain, the extreme rainfall events have increased of late. So most of the rain falls in 2 or 3, 4 days after the whole monsoon season, and they create flooding problems. Then we have 8 stormwater pumping stations. We pump out huge amounts of good pure water into the sea, but the uneven and extreme events create flooding issues in the cities. But that is during the monsoon time. But during the summer time, even though in spite of having this much water in our cities, the summer time, our dams run slightly dry, which results in water cut to the people. So we have to impose water cuts. We have to ration the water. So we have both the extremes. On the monsoon, we get extreme flooding issues. On the summer, we have water rationing issues. So it affects us, the rainfall affects us badly. So what we have been trying is, we want to have a mixed portfolio instead of depending only on the surface water reservoirs, 7 dams. Now we are working with the Israeli company ID Technologies to create a 400 MLD desalination plant. First, we want to go for 200 MLD and it will be scalable. So we want to have a slightly diverse portfolio. This is a part of new culture because so far we have been thinking the dams are sufficient, they will take care of us and there is sufficient water security. But of late we realize that is not. The extreme events can affect us. If the monsoon 1 year fails, it is going to create huge problems. So we are now diversifying our portfolio. Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we are proud to say we are one of the local government bodies who have spent large amounts of money in creating this tunnel network. In our city, we have more than 85 kilometers of deep underwater tunnels, and we are one of the oldest to do it. We have been doing it from 1980s, more than 40 years we have been doing it. And we have been transferring the water from faraway dams through tunnels. So one of our dams located about 100 miles away. So we are transferring water from those dams also by tunnel as well as surface pipelines. So we are one of the leading corporations in Asia to adopt these type of tunnel technologies. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So, like I said, the tunnel boring machines, the SCADA systems, and the new dams, the rolling concrete dams. So these are the things we have been adopting. But the one issue like we face every time is all this adoption of new technologies require huge capital expenditure. The capital expenditure can happen only if the water is priced properly. So for us in Mumbai, one of the major issues is how to recover the operation maintenance costs, which we are currently subsidizing from some other accounts. That is one of the major issues, but we are working on it. So next slide, please. Yeah, and another opportunity in the new water culture, what we are looking at is, we are supplying about 3,800 million liters of water every day to the population for drinking purpose. So in the process, we are creating almost 2,000 million liters of water, which is the gray water, and it is let down. So we are currently in the process of appointing consultants, and within the next 5 years, we are planning to recycle and reuse this water to the maximum possible extent. We are in the process of appointing consultants. Even our sewage treatment plants, we have been asking for the tertiary treatment and followed by potable treatment. So this is the thing. So the next 5-6 years, our focus as a municipal corporation, our focus will be to have an environmentally sensitive approach towards creation of new resources, diversification of water resources. Unlike the past 100 years, now we are very keen to look forward to diversification of water resources, including diesel plants. And we are focusing on recycle and reuse of the water which is supplied in huge quantities to our population. And to achieve this, we are also looking forward to changing the people's mindset. The reason being, we can easily recycle, our corporation can spend the capital expenditure and put all those recycling plants, and we can create potable water. But one major challenge before us is how far the public will accept it as a pure drinking water. So that is a major challenge. So the people, in spite of these technical options, there would be initial mind block not to drink the water which is recycled. So that mind block, we have to make it go away. So that is another responsibility which is on the corporation. I think part of the new culture, we have to take up that challenge and change the opinion of the people towards the recycled water. So that also we will be focusing on. So for the coming 10 years, there will be major changes with regard to the Municipal Corporation of Greater Bombay with regard to water supply. So it will be becoming more environmentally sensitive. We will create more energy ourselves, and we will try to recycle most of the water. And at the same time, we will make people to participate and utilize the recycled water to the maximum extent, saving lots of carbon footprint. So that is a broad picture. I think with this I close, and I look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Philippe, tu es muté. Est-ce que tu peux te remettre le son?
Philippe, you forgot to switch on your microphone. Oop. I apologize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verrazzo, for your presentation and respect of your time. I highly appreciate it. I found very interesting in your presentation the fact that you highlighted the importance of the time and the evolution of approaches, technologies, and mentalities in the course of years and centuries. And probably this brings to us this concept that a new water culture needs to be adaptive and think about how we adapt to very changing conditions. This was true in the past, in the present, and this will continue for sure. And adapting means, of course, you need probably technologies, new approaches in engineering, but not only that. You have said in your last slide, of course, it's also about reducing the carbon footprint of water production or supply and treatment, reusing water, so that there are new logics and new mentalities to be developed. And even in the public, you need to make a change and acculturate and educate people to make them accept these new the changes and new approaches adopted. So thank you very much for all of you for the different facets and light you brought on this issue of a new water culture. I found that extremely interesting and complementary and inspiring. So we have with time for a few questions. There are several in the chat, so let me go back in time. And there was the first question addressed to you, Emily. Of course, there was a question about the inclusion of virtual water, but I think we could focus on the second part of the question. It's about how do we integrate diversity of forms, scales, spatial scales, and time scales in the concept perception of a city. I think we should open our course for the next 6 months about this. This is a wide question, but probably you touch a little bit upon this time variability and space variability. So just if you can elaborate a little bit on that point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for this question. But yeah, actually, this is a universe question by itself, in the sense that yeah, it is all about the work for designers and planners to know how to do it. And we all have diverse methods, diverse perspective, diverse options, depending on culture, depending on education or not, or approaches. Well, all kind of approaches. But so I can just talk a little bit about myself. I would say, how do you do it? First of all, try to learn how do your territory works in small scale, in large scale. Try to understand the fluxes, the processes, the elements. So I would say that before even thinking about designing or anything else, try to understand what are the components of the territory, of the sites, but not just as, I'm trying to say to students, not just as an architect, but also as a geographer, as a landscape architect, as an hydrologist. Do not take the city for something that is only concrete and static and impermeable. So just you have to yes, you have to learn a lot. You have to go and try to speak with landscapers to understand what does even the word ground for them mean. It's something totally different from architecture to landscape perspectives. So just learn to know how do trees breathe or proceed with water and air. How do they create microenvironments? So in fact, how do you do it? You just have to go for a wonder person knowing about all the skills and knowledge of the world and biodiversity and at all scales. And maybe when you're a superhero, you will be able to answer how do you do that. But maybe just by looking at others, what are they doing, experimenting, and we'll try to answer how do we do it.
Thank you very much. So as an urbanist, you would recommend we develop this capacity for you to dialogue with many other disciplines and sectors. Thank you so much. We had sorry, we have to be a little bit fast because the end of the session is approaching. We had a question still from the same person, Mr. Buendu. It's about the T-Park experience in Hong Kong. So this is a question for you, Dominique. It was asking about the capacity of extension capacity of the plant to absorb an increased production of sludge. And also a complementary question: what is done with what cannot be kept in the process? So, is there something coming out from this treatment plant, and what do you do with what's coming out of?
That's right. Okay, thank you very much. The ashes go to landfill. And in terms of capacity, yes, that was from the inception. That's behind basically the whole concept. I saw the question in the chat. I mean, going from 700 tons per day up to 1,000.2 and maybe 0.4. I mean, is basically what warrants the whole project and triggered, because until then, before the construction of that facility, all the sludge was basically disposed of in landfill, which creates, I mean, of course, overwhelms the capacity of the landfills in the Hong Kong territory. And on the top of it creates hazards because, I mean, sludge is not, how can I say that, suitable to become the main part of the stuff that is disposed of in the landfill. And so that, again, that justifies the creation of that facility. And of course, I mean, the T-Park is designed to basically swallow that extra sludge generation. And that's quite right. I mean, I saw it's about a doubling of the sludge which is produced when these schemes, I mean, collecting the sewers sewage slurry from the northern and southern shores of the Victoria Harbour. I mean, that generates as much extra sludge. The benefit of that, I mean, if we leave Sea Park aside, is that the Hong Kong Harbour water quality is back to the basin water grade, which enables, I mean, anyone to enjoy that. I mean, so I gave you a grasp on the visitors facility within the center, but right at the doorstep of any Hong Kong citizen is this improved environmental quality.
Thank you so much. A very quick question from me on that, because you mentioned there's quite a high number of people visiting the parks, and you have a lot of educational activities there. So how would you assess the impact of this education? So reconnecting the people to water management, even in similar aspects of wastewater and sludge and others. So what's the impact of all that from your
It's a good question. I mean, it's I suppose that's the sort of question that would need to be addressed by, say, specialists. Sure. What I can say, I mean, at least from our perspective as operators of the facility, is that we had a target of welcoming something like 100 visitors per day. And usually it's in the area of 270 or 300 people per day that pay a visit to the site. So in terms of, how can I say that, generating an appetite for people to say, what's going on? I mean, what is this Sea Park facility about? I mean, it sounds to be great and enjoyable in terms of the leisure capacity, but all right, I mean, that creates, I mean, that appetite is there. And what is even more satisfactory is that people return there. So not only, I mean, they are satisfied with what they've seen, but they feel an appetite again to come another day and enjoy the leisure capacity, the landscape gardens and everything. So from that perspective, we can see that we have an impact. But of course, I mean, it'd be interesting to dig a little further and see whether, I mean, the schools that visited it, I mean, what is exactly that the sort of message that the children brought back from the facility? I mean, and I mean, there's a whole lot of questions that we need to ask ourselves.
No, we're all convinced that there's a huge need. That's what I said in introduction of educational efforts around all these transformation we want to produce in the way we do things, and we plan cities, we manage water and in an integrated way. Thank you so much again. There's also a question for the third speaker from China, still from the same auditor. The question is this one, Dr. ARCEAU. Does the city regulation contribute to protection of urban wetlands in Beijing? So I guess this is about the wetlands inside the city itself. You have showed, of course, very clearly also the need to link to the outside territories and water protection outside the city. So yeah, you have a reply to this question?
Thank you. We do have very good regulation from the city level and the national level, but there are always ways to get it around. And the authority, the industry, the business, even the research assessment organization, they all love to build projects. I'm not talking about the public utility. They build, for example, in Beijing, they build a forest in the grass wetland park, but which is, we think, which is not good enough. Recently, we want to preserve the natural wetland, especially those very small, little wetland inside and around the city, especially for Beijing. Those natural wetlands are very vital for biodiversity. We have a study of a case study of Finland. There is a new scientific paper to describe, to illustrate the natural wetland. The people built the wetland is over 17 years. It's much, the biodiversity is much less poor than the natural wetland. But nowadays, the megacity in China has money, and they are trying to do eco protection system, and they are building new parks, which is, but we are trying to stop those kind of building, and there's still a lot to do. Although the eco-civilization and new water culture are quite well and will be respected in China these days, but still there are quite a lot to do. Thank you.
This is me thanking you. I can confirm because I visited Wuhan, Xi'an, Shenzhen. I've seen and we've heard in the first day from a Chinese keynote speaker about the sponge city experience in China. So in recent years, you're right, there are a new approach being applied to urban development with green and blue corridors, which are quite impressive. They are usually rebuilt or completely built, new green and blue infrastructure. But then this improves definitely the way cities function and manage water and recycle water, treat the water, and also offer a good living conditions to citizens. So there would be a lot of experience to mention, in fact, to respond to that question. Thank you again. We have still time for last question. So we have addressed the 4 of you. This is for the last speaker, still from the same auditor. It's a kind of comment and question. 50 years, 7 dams. Visibly, the policy is to build additional dams. Perhaps one aspect would be to also work out water use efficiency and create sensitivity about that among the consumers. So there's a kind of educational need. So Dr. Verhasu, could you elaborate a bit on that? It's true that in alternative to dams, you have mentioned also seawater desalination and other sources to be addressed. But here's the question about this sensitivity and educational need to increase the use efficiency before we look for more water.
Yeah, that's very relevant. Before we go for creating new water resources, we have to improve the water use efficiency. Usually the non-revenue water is close to 10 to 15% in the Western region. But place like Mumbai, it is the non-revenue water is close to 35%. So 35% of water, either it goes unbilled or it goes as a waste. So there is a huge scope for improving the engineering efficiencies there. That's why, like I said, we draw water from 7 different dams and we treat it at 2 master balance reservoirs. Then we have 27 service reservoirs. So our efficiency is very good till we distribute the water to the master balancing reservoirs. But a lot of leakage happens at the distribution level. The water districts, a lot of losses happen. So I think there, if you adopt the metering and the leakage, early leakage detection and SCADA-based early detection and fast curing of those leakages, there definitely we can improve the water use efficiency. That expenditure would be definitely much lesser than going for construction of new dams and creating new dams. So to that extent, we have to improve the engineering efficiency. At the same time, we are also looking at how the different approaches weigh in terms of the carbon footprint also. For example, even though we are already going ahead with the diesel plant, we are still studying how it works in terms of carbon footprint and energy efficiency vis-a-vis construction of new dam. Because the new dam, the water comes down by gravity. So the continuous energy consumption may not be that much, even though it gives us security. So we have to look at all these different options. But the best thing is increase the engineering efficiency as much as possible within the existing systems, and as far as possible, recycle and reuse. If you adopt both these approaches, I think we'll go a long way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to close this session very soon, and I would have loved to continue this conversation with you. I think it's very inspiring, and I would have myself a lot of additional questions to raise and discuss with you. I hope we could have that opportunity in the future, and for sure we will stay in contact. It's very difficult now to summarize just in a few words what this new water culture is, but you've definitely given a very interesting contribution to that definition from all your perspective, and which were complementary and very, very inspiring. I would say perhaps it's a culture which reconnects people to water, to territories, to their responsibility, to care about a resource, to care about and support those around them who are managing and improving and guaranteeing water resources and guaranteeing a life environment. So yeah, reconnecting, educating people, involving them in all these solutions, even in the acceptance even of new technologies and new approaches. So there would be much to elaborate on that, and I can tell you UNESCO is very much interested to work on this idea of water culture. This is embedded in our programs. We are producing books, and I hope we will continue working with you all on these very important subject. It's time for me to thank you. Take care, stay safe around. We are not yet out of the pandemic, but hopefully next time we could all meet in presence somewhere. And I really enjoyed sharing this very vivid and interesting session. And so I thank you. I thank you all for presenting, for listening, and contributing to the discussion. Have a nice day or nice night. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Philippe. Bye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pipart, and all speakers for your interesting presentations. And thank you, dear participants, for your attention and interest. The side events Be Water 1 will start right after at 12:30 p.m. Then the next free session will be roundtables starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.